was the last time that you walked into a spider web? It was annoying, wasn't it? Do you think when that spider spun that web, he was intending it for you? Absolutely not. This web did not work for its intended purpose. That is exactly how absolute gun control is. The absolute gun control web traps the unintended target. If a person has a clean record, then it should be their right if they want to get an assault weapon under the Second Amendment. But it is our right that we make sure that they abide by certain restrictions and guidelines. Limiting guns will not be the end-all to gun violence. To control gun violence, we must have tougher laws and not fewer guns. Taking guns out of law-abiding citizens' hands is not the answer, because criminals commit crimes. Taking away the guns will not prevent crime. However, tougher laws will punish the criminals that commit them. Under this policy, any 2 weapons charges will be a felony, carrying a mandatory 10-year sentence. A felon caught with a gun will automatically be looking at 10 years, and that will go up if the weapon was seized in the act of a crime. The 10-year mandatory federal sentence should remind you of a drug sentence, but this would be called the Crackdown on Gun Violence. Extensive background checks will be done to include fingerprinting and the striations of the fired round put in a federal database before purchase. Any modification of this weapon after purchase will be a felony. If this weapon is stolen, it must be immediately reported because the weapon will be traced back to the original owner. Any sale of previously owned weapons must be done at a facility capable of uploading the fingerprints to the federal database. All sales of weapons from owner to owner will be prohibited. Any violation of this law will carry a mandatory 2-year sentence. We can reduce gun violence with the implementation of 2 federal laws. That is, the trigger lock law and the firing pin law. All weapons will be under a trigger lock law, meaning that while in transport, a trigger mechanism must be on the trigger guard. Handguns do not have to have this trigger mechanism while in the home. However, all residents of the home should be familiar with gun safety. Assault weapons in the home must be in accordance with this law, but we will get to that later. A trigger lock law helped reduce violent killings by 50% in San Francisco. In 2005, Deputy Chief Morris Tabak, who is in charge of the Investigations Bureau, stated, quote, "We are committed to stopping the violence, and I am very encouraged and happy with the numbers of over the past year. Police have stated that most important factor in the decline is the effort to take violent criminals off the street with the help of this trigger lock law. A person with a concealed weapon permit will be exempt to this trigger lock law. Carrying a concealed weapon without a valid permit will be an automatic 5-year prison sentence if the weapon is unregistered, and 2-year sentence if it is registered. To be considered concealed, the weapon must not be visible and be ready to fire, meaning that the trigger lock mechanism is not there and the firing pin is assembled. Under this law, the weapon does not have to be loaded. If you do not have the trigger lock mechanism, then you must abide by the firing pin law. The firing pin law will state that the removal of the firing pin is the acceptable measure to disassemble the weapon. All assault weapons must be in accordance with the firing pin law while in the home, in storage, or in transport. These assault weapons to include AR-15s, AK-47s, and AK-74s, etc. Failure to abide by this law will result in confiscation of your assault weapon and a mandatory 5-year prison sentence. Under this law, assault weapons will only be used for hunting and marksmanship at a qualified range. But even this is overkill to some. Bruce Snyder, a retired Michigan cop with 40 years of service, states, quote, "No sensible hunter would use an assault firearm because there's no need to shoot a large number of rounds. It's extremely dangerous because the shooter could accidentally hit someone. Military and law enforcement will be exempt to this firing pin law." Now I know these are some radical laws. However, these laws will not harm the law-abiding citizen, but they will protect the law-abiding citizen. Consider this. A chain-link fence with a lock is not the best perimeter defense. However, the law-abiding citizen sees the lock and respects it. But if that lock was not there, the law-abiding citizen will breach this perimeter. On the other hand, criminals see the lock and will either break the lock or jump the fence, because that's what criminals do. Criminals break laws. So we need tougher penalties to punish these criminals that break the laws. Locks and laws just keep honest people honest.